Welcome to Just an Average Citizen, the podcast that helps to educate, inform, and empower you to make an impact in Abilene and the Big Country. Welcome back to the next episode of the podcast. I'm really excited about this one. There's a lot to talk about. So if you see the timing, don't worry. I'm going to break this up to where you're just trying to figure out what's going on. You get the bare basics. And if you're like, okay, I'm ready to go a little next level on you, Tammy, help me out. I've got it there. And then third level is super impactful and aware, a citizen who makes a big impact and is aware of what's going on. So you can actually really be a person who influences culture. And that has to do with some local events happening in regards to protecting our children. So if that's something you are interested in, just stick around. I'm going to be a little bold here on this episode and speak some things that I haven't really addressed in a while. And if you've been with me since the beginning, you know that I have not stayed silent on social issues or things that affect different parts of our community. And when it comes to kids, hands off. So with that being said, it's so important that you share this podcast with your family and friends so that they too can be a part of learning what's going on in our city and in the Big Country. And even with people who don't live in the Big Country, if they live in any part of House District 71, or, they don't have to be directly involved to start to understand that these are things that transcend location. It's stuff that we have to do as citizens in our communities. We've got to start re-engaging because many decades ago, generations ago, they somehow got us to believe that we left government alone and government got to do what it wanted, and the church stayed separate. Oh my gosh, I can't even think of his name right now. Was it Francis Schaeffer? Is a great biblical scholar. Or just he really processed a lot of what we're experiencing now. And I think that's what's so crazy is reading him. It's like, oh my gosh, how did he know what we were experiencing now? Because we were experiencing it back then. But part of it is there was an ability to separate a private and public sphere. And we were told that the public sphere involves facts and reason, and the private sphere involved feelings and spirituality. And we have allowed those two to stay compartmentalized. And so the problem is anything that happens in the spiritual world, by the time the church understands what's going on in the culture, it's gone through every other aspect of culture, and we're one of the last ones to get engaged and involved. And so that's why I'm trying to do what I'm doing, to move us a little bit back to where we're participating in culture so that we can actually have an influence. Because the problem is, since Christians and the church has been moved to the private sphere in school, education, government, you name it, we've been put aside. Morality has gone out the window. There is no morality because absolute truth no longer exists in the public, in our culture, because they think truth can be changed. You can twist in scripture one way just to fit your agenda. They don't know that truth is truth and God is truth. And the other things that we're saying are truth are not truth. It's just opinions and feelings. And as long as we've not got that foundation stone solidly established, we're going to be shifting to and fro all the time, trying to engage in our culture. And so even as we engage, and even if you may be listening, you're like, I don't really have anything to do with God. That doesn't matter, because you as a citizen are going to carry great weight and influence. And of course, being a Christian is what is going to have the greatest impact in our culture, in our government, because it was founded on God's word. So there's going to be some wrestling we're going to have to do to figure out what it is to actually be a good citizen. And the founders based it on the premise that we would fear God and we would understand the Bible. And when we took that away, everything started to crumble down even more so and faster than it had been in prior generations. So that's why I'm trying to engage and help you know what's going on so that you can start to begin to relearn what it's like to be a citizen, because most of us are not citizen. We're just existing. And that's why no one's running for office. That's why when we get people in office, they really don't do anything, because that's been the standard that has been set prior to them, prior generations. And so until we start getting more people engaged than 3 to 4% of the population, it's really going to be a struggle to make sure that we leave this world better than we found it for our children and our grandchildren. And that's I implore you to recognize that while you may be satisfied with what's going on, it is only going to get worse unless we stop and do something about it. So let's start off with the first part. So there's going to be 3 parts to this because there has been so much good happening. And not good. There's been a lot of good that's happened, and I want to talk about that and give shout outs where they need to happen. But there's also important things coming up, and I think we need to have a little discussion about that. So I'm going to try and manage my time so that I'm not going too long, but long enough to where I give you a little bit more where you're ready for it. So first thing, let's go to last week's city council meeting. I actually was at youth camp, so I wasn't here, and I didn't even know that they had started live streaming again. And so I want to show you something really quickly. There's 2 things I want to address. First, it's item number 10, 11. Oh, see, when I downloaded the packet, I was quite frustrated because look, the packet, they don't amend the packet when they amend the agenda. It says amended, but when they put items back in the packet, they don't say that. And so I was confused when I was watching the meeting because I was like, I never saw that. Sorry, I just realized that, this is the problem is, how hard would it be to say, hey, additional packet items added, right? Okay, so we talked about item 10 was the PACE program, so 11. Okay, so they actually had an ordinance. Let me see if I can get it in here. This is so hard to show in here, and I probably, the ordinance was about 10 pages, and the biggest issues that I think many people had, if you don't know what's going on, there was a shooting where I believe 3 people were shot, and I believe all of them, if not most, 2 of them, I believe all of them were died from their injuries at this hookah bar that apparently was leased, or someone rented the event center to have the center to have an event, or wherever it was. So it wasn't actually the owner of the property. And so there have been a couple of escalations, but it did escalate. I believe it was 4th of July weekend. And so next thing we know, actually it had happened before July 4th weekend. It happened the weekend before, so the end of June. Because then on July 3rd, I believe when they posted the agenda, this was on the agenda to talk about, which was an ordinance. And if you paid attention to me or listened to me at all, you know that I said typically what will happen is if there's an issue going on in the city, they'll put a discussion so that they can have direction on what needs to happen. However, this was claimed to be a public emergency or public safety related. And so because of that, they didn't have to have a first reading. They just had to have a final reading. And it was a final reading, basically approving an ordinance that required BYO, bring your own beverage. I messed that up so many times on that podcast. Whatever I was doing, bring your own beverage businesses. And so the Taylor County Expo is one of those. There's wedding event venues that are those. Fraternities can be considered that. Universities can be considered that. I think there's all these different types that they don't fall under the standard requirement for tobacco and alcohol administration requirements. And so they looked into other cities and they saw other cities had done something similar to this. And it was like, they were like, okay, what is the most strict possible path we can go forward, and let's do it because we're going to shut this down. And it was just really enlightening to see the response. Again, public safety was the excuse, but it was only affecting one business basically in town. And when I reached out to the city manager, I said, are there other businesses? Have there been other incidences beside this one incident? And she said, no, it was just this one incident. And so I was like, okay, that is a heavy-handed response to one negative experience within this community. And so my question is, are there not police laws on the books that we can already enforce to stop some of this? It was happening at late in the night. It wasn't good. There's already some parameters set up for these types of events because of the problems that arise during these time of the day. It's early in the morning, like from the 2 to 7 hours. Anyway, there seemed to be several steps missing in this response. And again, I don't know if the mayor instructed the city manager or the police chief was asked, or the police chief said, hey, do something. And then the city manager was like, here's what we need to do. Or the mayor's like, fix it. And so the lawyer came up with this and he seemed to copy it and do it extreme. And the extreme was that every BYO business, anyone that wanted to have a BYOB business had to get security guards per 50 people. They had to get wands or metal detectors. They had to have security cameras. They had to be responsible minors consuming it would be the responsibility. They had to be on the premise regardless, and they had to be on the premise for the event. And it was just really strict and really overreaching. Kind of, to me, it reminded me of like the breeder situation or the rooster situation I've heard in the past. And so what happened was, I wasn't there, but I watched the meeting and I was very thankful for discussion. I was thankful that the council had a really robust conversation about it. This seems to be heavy-handed. Why are we doing this response? And by the end, it was like, okay, we're going to take it back to the table and scratch it and see what we can do to move forward. And I really appreciate even what Councilman Beard said was, he was like, hey, isn't there a nuisance ordinance that we could already kind of just specify more details to address this problem rather than reaching it all across, everyone. And we had, I believe there were 6 people that came and spoke, which is a significant amount at a city council. Plus, a lot of people emailed the council to let them know how they felt. And so everyone seemed pretty much like, this isn't a good idea. We need to wait. And then the mayor was like, okay, we'll wait. And so it was moved forward to be discussed at a later date. And I was very grateful. They could have suspended the motion, or could have motioned to table it so that it could come back for only one more reading, which is problematic because, again, that gives very little time for the public to get involved and give feedback if you only have one reading, because that means you have literally less than 6 days to even respond. And by the time you find it out, it could be too late, or it's just problematic. And so I was grateful that the mayor and the city council decided, no, we're just going to scrap it and start over. So I was very proud, very excited for what happened. I'm sorry, I should have been playing a video so you could see what it looked like while this was happening. And so they didn't have to have any further discussion. Okay, so it was really good. This is the way it's supposed to work. They try to solve a problem, and then the citizens give feedback and say, oh, wait, we didn't solve it quite the way the citizens wanted. Let's pivot and do it. And now, because the owner of the property will no longer allow that particular group to utilize the property, that problem has been solved for now. And it's important that we don't put this in a crisis situation. And again, I hope most of you learned that COVID taught us that public emergencies, public safety is a broad brush stroke that allows the government to do more than really they should, because we need to be really specific in what we allow the government to do, so that they don't take it further, kind of like the Johnson Amendment. The Johnson Amendment was an amendment not the Johnson Amendment. I can't remember even what the bill was called. It was created to target some political action committees that were going against the Lyndon B. Johnson, and he didn't want them to have access to money, so he basically put a stop to the political involvement. And then the Johnson Amendment was amended to include churches. And so it's overreaching, and it's we don't even know what it's targeting anymore. And now most people don't even know that they don't even have to, no one's going to fine them. No one's going to remove their tax exempt status because they don't want it to go to courts, because it's going to be shown to be unconstitutional, overreaching. And so so the good people always do the right thing, and the people who break the law are going to break the law. And that's the problem with these overreaching ordinances, is that they can cause more harm to the people who actually are doing the right thing than it will ever cause or impede the people who are breaking the law. The other thing I wanted to point out to you, so I'm going to go back to this. Oh, actually, yeah, I'm going to go back to this. Let's see here. Let's just see here. For the Abilene Heritage Square, I think it's important to have this discussion because I was talking about public-private partnerships, and what you have to be aware of is when the presentations are made or when things are presented, it's typically in a light that makes you want to go, yes, I identify and agree with this idea. It's a wonderful thing. This is amazing. And I have to remind myself that if I was just listening to what was being said, I'd be like, oh, awesome, let's do it. But that's not the case, because we know, if we're paying attention, we know more information. And so I'm just going to use this as an example. Again, it's in the works. It's done. There's nothing we can do to change how they've done it, how they've handled it. And it was interesting because I stumbled across a city council meeting, I believe back in late 2018 and then early 2019, where they were talking about fixing the leaking windows that were going and dripping into the basement. And they're like, let's just not bother with it, because we know this library's coming, that the Abilene Heritage Squares, they're going to work on it for us. Let's just not worry about it. Let's just not put any money into the library. Let's just wait until we get this new library. And so they proceeded as if they were getting a new building. And again, This building was funded. The story they told at this past council meeting was reminding us that they funded Carnegie. The Radford family went to New York to get this funding from Carnegie. Carnegie funded it so that they could have a public library for Abilene. It was apparently important to say that a bunch of women were the instigators of this. So I don't think that connects now because it's not all women, although there's a woman in charge. But this Carnegie building was built back in the I don't know if it's the 30s, is that what they said? Or the 60s? I mean, it's been around forever. So they may have started the process in the 30s and maybe it wasn't finished till the 60s. But this building has been falling. I mean, it's been going downhill for at least 4 decades since, I mean, it was only supposed to last, I think, 4 decades. And now since then, we're now into almost, we're halfway to 2020. We're halfway through the 2020s. So we're talking almost 30 years in this generation. I mean, in this last millennium, and then plus probably easily another 20. So we're almost in 5 decades that this building, there's been no plan to replace it. And that's how government works. They don't worry about problems until it comes up for the most part. And that's what's been communicated through the council. Like nobody really did anything. They didn't worry about it. They just kicked the can down and now we're trying to fix it all. And so this has been going on for 10 years or more, this discussion of more than that for this library and what they're going to do with it. And so instead of replacing a building that we own that had some asbestos problem, I believe it had some updating problems, but I can't even imagine if you poured $15 million into that building, what an amazing building you would have. If paid for, it'd be restored. Now, it doesn't have all the bell and the whistles that the Abilene Heritage Square would have, but again, it's taxpayer funded. This is not funded by individuals in the private industry. And so, or I guess Carnegie funded it, but I mean, what we would be doing to fix it. So even how do you fix that? I mean, to take $1 million, you would have to probably take out a certificate of obligation because I doubt they'd have $1 million that they could contribute to the library. I mean, right now, interestingly, we're about to pay that much in rent alone. But again, hindsight's always 2020. We could have planned this better. We didn't. We failed to do it. The problem I have is, yes, the elevator's been out. They've had leaky windows for a while. This is in the downtown location. We own this building. And now this Abilene Heritage Square is coming along saying, hey, will you give us the building? Hey, will you give us the insurance money that we could use to fix the almost $1 million of insurance money to fix that you could have used for something else once you gave us the building? No, you're going to donate to fix that. We're going to take advantage of the TERS, which is the tax investment increment reinvestment zone. They have like a sliver of it touching the TERS. And so now they're getting $500,000 to fund that. And then, oh yeah, it's going to be turnkey. Oh wait, no, now you're going to have to pay for everything to go in the building, and another $3 million. And we're only going to pay the same amount as the mall, which is a great price, 60 cents a square foot. Oh, no, never mind. Now it's going to start at 74 cents a square foot and gradually increase to $1.12 per square foot. So I don't even know how much rent they're paying. I have done the due diligence of trying to understand this along the way, but it's what's called a Chapter 380 agreement, I believe, and those are private. And that's the private-public partnership. You cannot understand. We don't know what's been spent. We don't know what they're using the money. Well, they don't have to tell us. They've raised, they said in one statement, oh, it's been completely donated by private individuals, but they've also received federal grants, state grants. So it's like there's a lot of conflating of information. I don't think they're trying to hide anything. I don't think there's a big conspiracy, but it is just frustrating when the information is loosey-goosey and it's hard for us as citizens to track what's going on. So we have a perfectly good we have a building that needs to be repaired, but it's been in disrepair for 7 years at least, if not longer. It's now going to sit vacant. What are they going to do with it? Are they going to sell it? Are they going to repurpose it? Why didn't the Abilene Heritage Square just do a good job and donate the space to the library so that the city could just use it and not have to pay for it? I mean, there's so many questions I have, but there's a mutual partnership that is required in a public partnership and public-private partnership. And I'm not sure how the city is benefiting, because when the council gets up and says, oh, okay, look, well, if we had done this old building, it would have cost $40 million. And that would have been SEO, and we would have had to pay debt. So that would have been $60 million. So we're saving $30 million. No, we're not. It's not that way. It's not like I have a car that works, drives, gets me where I need to go. And I go, I don't like this car anymore. I'm not going to put oil in it. I'm not going to put gas in it. And I'm just going to wait until I get this new car on a lease and pay for it. with, $1,000 payment month. Oh, look, because I didn't have to buy a new car. Now I'm paying less, whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's not apples and oranges the way they're comparing it. And to me, as an average citizen, it's not what they're doing. It's how they're telling us about it. And if they're like, listen, we know that it probably would have been good to put money into this, but because of the way it got, or this is why we decided it. And every one of them has a reason why they don't think it was worth investing into that downtown library that was funded by Carnegie, that they're so proud of how it came to be, but they're ready to throw it away and build something new at the Lincoln building that was donated to the Abilene Heritage Square. There's so much that the city has given of this that we are really not coming ahead. The Abilene Heritage Square is coming ahead. They're getting all the stuff that they couldn't have afforded probably without all the additional fundraising. So again, it's hard to understand where it is, but again, the conversation is where I'm struggling with. And I haven't been a part of this conversation since the beginning. So things like the flat fields, I've been more a part of that discussion, or, other things like that there's just things that I'm noticing that there's some lack of transparency. And as I have talked to the council about this, it has been very disconcerting. So now I've got to wrap this up because this segment is going a little longer than I wanted to. So every year, you can go to, I was going to show it to you real quick right here. Let me see if I can find it. There we go. All right. So if you come to the homepage on the Abilene website, the city website, you can come down here and scroll, and there's these blue buttons. You click on financial transparency. Next week is budget. July 21st starts the budget meeting workshop, which starts at 8:30 in the upstairs chamber conference room. What did I do? Okay, so financial transparency. You can see here's open book annual budget. The bonded debt, which I'll have to talk about. Annual budget. So if you just click on here, they have all the annual budgets. So they have the other proposed budgets hidden in another spot I don't understand, but here's the 2025 proposed budget. So if you were to open it up, let's see here, it would look like this. And look, I found out about it, and because I have an awesome printer, I was able to print it out, and I've already got my notes in it. But this is where I started 2 summers ago with the 2024 budget, and this was my first thing to ever print, and I felt so smart, and I hated to show anybody because I would think that people were a nerd. Then last year we did this one, 2025-26. Or 24-25, so 25 year, and then this is the 26 fiscal year. And these are my questions that I have. I'm not sure how I can ask them or answer or get them answered, but I just make notes. And I make notes throughout all of it. One of the things I love about having some continuity is I can look at this year and see how it's changed over the years. And I'm not going to talk a lot about this because there's a lot of stuff that I have questions, but let me just let you know. I did ask Robert, I did present to the council, I believe back in November-ish, after I attended an airport hotel convention center. I can't remember, Abilene Convention Center Hotel Corporation Board, Development Corporation Board, or something like that. And Norm Archibald and the board talked about how the city was loaning them money because it couldn't cover their debt service payment again. And so then I went to the council. I was like, I feel frustrated because the mayor, Mayor Williams said, listen, it's not going to cost the citizens anything, yet now the city, which uses citizen money, taxpayer revenue, to give a loan to this corporation because they're just confident this airport's going to go. Well, that was not even supposed to be the case ever. It was never even supposed to be close to needing any help from the city. But the citizen revenue is being loaned to the corporation, and to me, that is putting the citizens on putting them at risk for potentially not being paid back. But I did find, looking back, I believe it was in this one. I think it was this one. It said the city is going to loan the board $2.6 million. I think they loaned them another $1 million. And then there was something in here saying that they've paid us back $950,000, but then it's going to something else, which is weird because shouldn't that money go to pay for other things rather than the hotel stuff? It's very confusing, and I can't ask questions necessarily yet, but I'm working on it. So there's not a lot of information in here that's super helpful. It's something good to look at if you want a baseline for preparedness. The biggest issue I have with this budget is anytime they mention any debt or obligation bond that we owe money on, they basically just say, here's our minimum payment. And so this is a great graph that you can look at that tells you this is the minimum payments we have to pay on all the debt. The problem is we never know how much the debt is based on this information. You have to go back to this one spot that I was showing you that tells you actually where all of our bonded debt is. And it is a teeny, tiny. Let's see if it is. I'll show you. It's okay. Yeah. So this tells you what's left, but it doesn't tell you what, here's original issue. Okay. So it would say like, hey, we only have to pay $1 million in debt service for these energy savings, but actually you paid, 15 million plus interest on those. So it's very, again, I don't think it's transparency, and they'll say, hey, but that's all we have to do. That's the way cities do it. And I'm like, yeah, but I think if you want people to trust you, which I find the trust in government right now is super low. Oh yeah, I'm already moving into this. See, this is part 2. I forgot to tell you. When we're talking about what's coming up in the workshop, this is the part 2 part. Sorry, I got excited and I was talking about last week's city council meeting. But this is the thing. If you were going to read anything of this, and I just hooked it to my dress, I guess I'm going to show you my hard copy because it's proof. I used to be embarrassed to show people. I think I told you that because I was a little bit embarrassed that I actually... Let's see, where is it? There it is. Okay, if you were to read anything, again, we have levels. Hey, I am like a sucky citizen because I've never cared before, and I wouldn't call you that. But if you're saying like literally I don't care, then I would say, look, they're hoping to... that doesn't help. That's a little bit out of context. I would have you read starting on page 7. This is a letter from the city manager's office, and it just gives you some property tax stuff. It's like they're looking to not maybe decrease taxes by $1 million. I don't know. And there's just some things that you can start to look at and go, I really don't understand what this means. But you start getting language and lingo if you're just trying to go, I've never done this before. So you can read about, let's see, it's quite a few pages. So you get as far as you can. I would say if you got to probably... the revenue. Oh, let's see. This is finance. We have the financing, the general fund, the revenue overview, the expenditure overview. I think that's huge. That's level 1, page 9 for sure. Page 7, 8, and 9. Yeah, page 7, 8, 9. And then if you're wanting to go next level, then you can read about the general fund, the budget highlights. That's really interesting. What did they take care of? Like I found out that they have in there, they're doing travel signal maintenance increase of $289 for equipment needs. Well, I was just marking down. I wasn't looking for this, but I just happened to notice that in 2024, they decreased that part by $141,000. And it's like, why did they do that? And now they've increased it almost twice that to start the program to replace signal. Anyway, these are things that I'm like, why don't we just keep it steady to pay for things? Because we know they're coming. These are expenses. We know that it's coming. They talk about how the amount of money they're getting for permits and demolition. The other thing that I would have a question, and again, I'm just letting you know kind of when I read this, I'm like transfer street maintenance fund, but this is, I guess the highlights go on to the next page as well. So if you read the general fund highlights, that's a start. Next one. But it says that they've increased the transfer to fund projects for $4 million because it's transferred out as projects are identified and awarded. As a result, the transfer amounts vary to maximize transfer based on available funds at the time. But I'm thinking, why do they change it? Why don't they just keep the money in there? I don't understand that. So these are just questions. Again, I don't necessarily think, oh my gosh, why are you doing the wrong thing? I will say one thing that's really concerning to me that is being kind of minimized, and it feels like it's been this way every time. I haven't gotten to look at every year because I'm still looking at it. But one of the things I noticed was they don't put how much debt we owe. They just tell you how much it's costing, the payments. I mean, like, do you budget? Like, let's see here. Do you budget? I don't even know how to translate that. That is not, when you tell someone, anyway. So this is on page, it's easier for me to look in the book than it is on the thing. So this is on page 45. If I go to page 45, this shows you the tax rates. And so we can look, I'm just going general here for you, but total tax rate is 0.74. Next year was 0.77, 0.77, 0.78, 0.78, 0.78. Then we went down a little bit, 0.76. Then we went down a little bit more, 0.73. Then we went back up to 0.76. And now we're looking to be 0.76. So again, we're not the highest tax rate we've had, but I would say that with this big surplus of Lancium money coming in or the AI project coming in, it would seem like they would give us a tax break. And so I'm hoping that there'll be some recognition that, hey, we've got more money. We're not going to raise it the 3.5 that we're allowed to, like we could. We need to actually reduce it. Now, I do recognize that there's going to be, we have maintenance operation, which is M&O. That's what it does to maintain and operate the city. And then we have interest in sinking, which is INS, and that's just debt we have. And so right now we're at 1.1706. And I do know that part had to go up because we took out 2 bonds. Which leads me to my last point on this section, because I'm trying to keep it minimal. Let me see if I can find it on here faster. There is some stuff going on with the, where did I see it? It might have been before this, with the Fireman's Pension Fund. And it's been struggling. They're at 45% being funded, and the state is starting to enact some new laws, which means you've got to have it up to 75 or 80 or something like that, maybe over 50. I don't even know what it is. It's a little bit confusing, and I'm not going to be able to find it. And I was like, I'll be able to find it. But what they said was, I started going to those meetings this year because I hadn't made it, and I was able, some things that happened on Tuesdays had changed. And so I was like, I can go. And it was the most informative, and I'm so glad I went. Now, I don't think I can go all the time. Like I didn't go the last one, because, they're just talking about basic stuff, which is good. But I went to the ones that were super important because they're talking about how are they going to fix this funding problem. They're 45% underfunded. In this, it's been going on for a while. I can't quite figure out if the firemen are not allowing the city to help fix it, or is the city just waiting for the firemen to tell them what to do because they don't want to fix it, because it's going to cost a buttload of money. And so we have that coming up, and it said somewhere in here, I literally read it, or else I wouldn't know this. It said we're going to wait until this year. Here it is. See, I found it. Okay. I just want you to know, I went to a meeting last night, city council meeting in another city, and they're like, we have a reporter here. And I was like, okay, I didn't think anything of it. And so we started sharing information, and the reporter was like, well, how do I know what you're saying is true? Where do I find this information? And I wanted to go, you're a reporter. Do you not know how to look it up? So I don't try to speak of, I hear things a lot. People are so gracious to tell me what they know is going on, but I really try hard to find the facts out first. That way I don't have to rely on them or use them as a source, but also I can have data to show people. So on page 15, this is what they say. And I want to tell you why this is concerning to me. Okay. So they have, with a funded ratio of 45.5%, this funding continues to be underfunded. The upcoming changes by the State Pension Review Board to stricter guidelines, will change after September 1st. The city will begin towards developing a strategy for funded of this plan. Well, that's not true. They already have a plan. They have two options: continue throwing money at it and hope it finally catches up, or to take out debt to the tune of probably, the funding shortage is over $50 to $70 million. So we're not talking chump change. But for them to say in here, future issues to consider, whatever they're going to do, it's going to cost a lot of money to get it to where we take care of our firemen. And I think this is where I understood some of this when the last mayoral election, and it was brought up that the COLA, or the cost of living adjustment, it has not been adjusted for the firemen once in the last 20 years. And again, that is part of the stability that they get from giving their lives to serve in the civil servant's position. And we as a city have failed to do it, and we're not taking care of it. And I am not a proponent of debt, but goodness gracious, get these guys in the right place so that we can start adjusting what we need to do to fix it. And I don't know what the city needs to do. And like I said, I don't know who's at fault here. I don't even know who's holding it up. But to say that we're going to have to look at that in the future, let's be honest. Let's say, hey, listen, this could require more debt or something. This is very vague. And again, if Robert Hanna had his way, he would have had this taken care of March, but then he retired. He wanted to get it taken care of before March, but the mayor said, nope, let's wait until like August. And now it's going to be September, or I don't know when it's going to be. And this is part of the things that frustrate me as a citizen, because I see what's going on, but I don't have any say in it, which is fine. That's not a big deal, but I don't have any way to ask and go, what are you doing and how are you taking care of it? And so, like I said, I thought with all this debt we were taking out, we would have to raise our taxes, but I didn't have the piece of the AI Center bringing in a lot of revenues from their taxes, that even though it's a 5%, it's significant. And Abilene is looking in a good position, plus sales taxes have gone up. And so our revenues have gone up. So people are spending more because the economy is doing better and things like that. But again, I think this is very minimizing something that I think is huge and needs to be talked about. And again, I've heard from one side that's like, yeah, we're not going to do anything. We're just going to keep trucking the way we've always done. We'll never take out debt for this. And then I've heard another side say, well, the best way is to get out under it, take out some debt, pay it so that we can get it squared away so that we can move forward in a better way. I don't know which side's going to get it, but there's something that has been decided. I don't know why we're dragging this out, except that It's much better to talk about it in September when everybody's not worried about the budget because it's already been decided. I don't understand that. And then they'll take out debt, and then it will come around next year and they'll be like, why is this going up? And you're like, I don't know. And they're like, oh, we did something last year. I mean, to me, it feels like, I was listening to a podcast the other day talking about how when you drop something on the 4th of July weekend on a Sunday night, you're hoping nobody pays attention. That's what I feel like this is, but I don't have that as fact. That's just the perception I have. And I've been telling them, hey, listen, stop creating angst in people because they don't know the information. Be transparent so that they don't have this angst feeling, this ick feeling when they're looking at things. So they go, okay, I can trust them because look, they're open books. They show us everything. And like, even when I confronted the city council and said, why are we loaning money to the downtown corporation? And they're like, oh, we've always talked about it. We'll go, hey, look, I think it was in last year's proposed budget. Or here, let me find it and get back to you. No information is ever given. It's just that you're wrong. Like this Abilene Heritage Square stuff. Again, someone was like, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Well, they don't even bother to talk to me. They just let me like, I'm not one to want to repeat bad information, but we've got to start working together. And I don't feel like that's the attitude or approach of people who are genuinely trying to improve things and understand things so we can move better in a healthy way so that we're not having to pay private industry for stuff that we should have taken care of, like this library, like this anyway. And again, that's my perception of things. That's how I view it. And as I learn and grow, I might think things differently, but for now, I'm just trying to help you understand because in my budget, I have to take care of things. We pay for cash for our cars. And if we don't have that money sitting around, then we're kind of screwed when our car goes bad. I don't get to just go take out a loan. Well, yes, I could, but it doesn't make logical sense, financial sense for us. And so I have to adjust and prepare for things. Why is the city not looking forward to that? And even in here, when they talked about the certificate of obligation for the energy savings, which is they're going to replace all the HVAC system and I think the water heaters or something like that on the water side, but it's like, that's energy savings. No, it's not energy savings. It's called, you have to replace things I don't know what you would call it, but it's not energy savings. We're not saving energy because we're stepping forward to replace an HVAC system. We're replacing the HVAC system so it doesn't go out and leave our employees in a hot building where they can't work in the summer. Okay, so that's my note. I got off. That was 2 parts. I'm going to transition to this last part. I'm going to try and do it quick because I don't want to give a lot of information because sometimes too much information is going to cause problems and you're going to shut down and fall asleep. And I think this is important. So one of the reasons why I am doing what I'm doing is because when I discovered the Sanctuary City for the Unborn Ordinance, I realized that I didn't know what I was doing. Most of the citizens didn't know what they were doing. The council, there was current council members who were not telling the truth about the ordinance, and I didn't know how to get in front of it and be a voice to help lead people in what is true and good and lovely and pure and good. I mean, let's operate in truth. How hard is that? And if you don't like it, say, listen, I don't like it. Don't tell people things about something that's not true. And I'm very still involved. And anytime I go and speak to a city council about the Sanctuary City for the Unborn Ordinance, I say, listen, the reason why I'm involved is because the Sanctuary City for the Unborn Ordinance opened my eyes to my role and how I had failed to do my job as a citizen and be a part of it. So I got involved there. I started knowing, and then some great parents stumbled upon a book. However they stumbled upon it, they found a book in the library that was atrocious. It was graphic. It was not appropriate to be sitting out on a shelf for a child to look at. And so thankfully the council swiftly removed it. And let me give you a little history. So there's an event happening on Wednesday in our city, and I'm not worried about what your response is, except I want you to know. So on Wednesday, the Abilene Pride Alliance is presenting a drag queen story time featuring a man who's dressed as a woman. And he has been in our city multiple times. So this is not his first time visiting. He doesn't live here. He's from San Angelo, and they're going to have crafts for children. And you can pay for your children to go listen to a man dressed as a woman in horrendous makeup, a caricature version of a woman, in my opinion, and it says it's suitable for all ages. Well, this very thing, I just want to tell you, this is where we're at today. But we know more because we have learned more. We've been exposed to great teaching. We've been exposed to the actual science behind this. This is no longer just being nice or loving people. I have book, Love Thy Body, Irreversible Damage. We know more now because science has been exposed, the truth behind what's going on. This isn't a toxic ideology. Queer ideology is behind this. This is what has told us we need to be allies, that we need to let people express themselves. else, that there's nothing sexual about a man dressing as a woman in front of children. And we have been lied to. And what I wanted to show you is there have been so many books that I have read and reread. Irreversible Damage by Abigail Shriver, Love Thy Body by Nancy Pearcey, When Harry Became Sally by Ryan Anderson. This book was banned from Amazon for a while. Dangerous Affirmation, The Threat of the Gay Christianity, because we've got a lot of people pretending to be Christians or saying they're quoting the Bible and saying that it's okay to love adults who are abusing children. 5 Lies of Our Anti-Christian Age. 10 tips on how not to talk to your kids about sex. This one's a classic that should be read by everyone. Lost in Translation, A Child Psychiatrist's Guide Out of Madness. Stolen Honor, Stolen Innocence, and The Queering of the American Child, which I gave a copy to every council member to read. I guess I need to get one for Miguel because he doesn't have one yet. So these are the books that I have read amongst many other. I have studied this because, like I said, the parents found a bad book in the library and were like, how did this even get in here? And we found out there were a lot of people confused about what children was appropriate for children. And even when we presented these bad books that were in our public library about fictional books about child trafficking, rape, gang rape, molestation, all these horrible things. And this is for mature audiences. I'm sorry, I didn't even mention that, but I'll put that on the disclaimer. These are all things that we understand. And so when we see this poor, unfortunate soul who's very confused because the world has said, oh, look, you can be anything you want to. God's creation doesn't matter. You can be a woman, even though you're a man. And so I don't have any necessarily animosity towards this man, except I have animosity towards people who affect children. So I did want to show you just a little timeline quickly. I'll go through this. The first time we encountered drag shows in Abilene was with children. Again, everything I'm mentioning today has a connection to a child. If these adults wanted to behave like adults, there's strip bars, there's adult clubs, adult bookstores, there's all the stuff that is for adults only. When they bring in children, I put on my mama bear hat. I'm go into full on do not harm a child, because what they're doing to children, even the bookstore owner said they don't know what they're doing. The kids do not understand this. And to me, that's more disgusting, that they're doing something to a child who doesn't understand, because you are messing with their mind. You are confusing them and you are disorienting them from what is real and true to made up, fictionalized needs of adults. One of the things I did want to point out real quickly was in this book, this was the most helpful in understanding that we have what's called DSM-5, and that is what they use to diagnose mental illnesses for the psychological world. Well, all of the queer activists, we're not talking about scientists or psychologists, they're pure activists got a hold of being on these boards, and so they were able to remove homosexuality and transgenderism and drag queens, all those issues out of mental illnesses, and now they're just whatever they are. But the thing is, men dressing like women is a sexual fetish. It is not about the man wanting to be a woman. There is something sexual about the very nature of that, and we cannot dismiss it in the presence of children. Now, if you were to walk down the street and a guy was dressed as a woman and doing his own thing, no big deal. But this is a story time event for children to come to. And we as a community cannot just sit by and go, oh, well, it's not our kids. Oh, well, it's a private industry. No, we want the business to know that we don't approve of this and don't mess with our kids. They have plenty of events at other locations that I have not touched with a 10-foot pole. I've tried to find legal ways to shut it down, and right now they're free and supported by at least the former city manager and possibly the mayor and the former mayor. I don't know who's supporting this, but they are having permission to not be tolerated. I do think there's some reasons why they're not pushing back against this crew right now, and I'll explain why in a minute. But I want you to understand the timeline history. In 2022, Mezzamies decided they would be a host to the drag show brunch hour or something like that, where they had brunch for drag queens from Abilene. They got enough harassment, and the city said, no, we're not going to do it. I say harassment. Enough people called and said, do not do this. This is bad, that they decided to cancel it, which was great. Then I think somewhere around that time, they had their first Pride Parade, and they had a picnic at, or that's at the Nelson Park. So they're doing it in the presence of children back then, even back, I don't even know what year that was. I didn't save the date. Where I kind of tried to start figuring out how to resolve it is when I found out that this particular gentleman, who's a bearded drag show person, they had a fundraiser for him at the Abilene Community Theater, and it was alcohol and all ages welcome. And the citizens of Abilene called City Hall. We made such a stink that within a couple of hours, that thing was changed to adults only. And guess what? Everyone went away. For the most part, everyone went away because it's about the children. And if you don't touch the children, then you're not going to have to worry about, at least for now, what you're going to do. The reason why I put this on here is the other time I really got involved was at the People's Plaza. They were having bingo fundraisers for drag. And this gentleman is on the Abilene Pride Alliance board. He was actually a board member to the Library Advisory Board when the book was realized on the shelf. And it came to light that he was actually a drag queen himself. And so he was promptly removed from the board and replaced by somebody else because of his involvement in this inappropriate behavior. Now, he has the right to do it, but he doesn't have the right to be on a city board while doing it. He said, he's been on there. Let's see here. I was just putting on here that, anyway, the reason why I did this, and I guess it's fine, it's the back of a kid's head. The reason why I put this picture here is there's a child sitting right there, and they invited the newspaper to come in and take pictures of it. And to me, they know what they're doing. They know that it's inappropriate to have a kid there, and they don't care. They want all kids there. So they are targeting children. Now, there's not a whole lot of children who are going to be there, but they are allowing children to be there. And again, if it was adults only, you wouldn't hear a peep out of me. This is from the first Pride Parade. This was the president for a season of the thing, and these were the MCs for that year. These are the type of people who are arriving at this Pride, and I am just shocked that the storybook capital of the world are okay with men dressed in S&M walking down the streets where kids are being encouraged to go check out sculptures and statues of different storybook characters throughout the city. And this is what we're allowing in our city, and it's not going to stop until we say enough is enough. We know in Naples, Florida, that at parks, they're not allowed to have these kind of performances around children. So why are we allowing this in the storybook capital? I think there's part of a reason why we're still allowing it, and we can't stop it. This particular gentleman in the pink, this is a gentleman. I don't know if he groomed him. I think that's maybe appropriate. I don't know. Prepared this guy to be a drag queen like this guy is. They're both from San Angelo. So they're not even from Abilene, but this is the guy who's going to be reading. He was at the first Pride. I wasn't expecting to find him, but I found him at the first one. They're twisting scripture. This is a church or something they had at one of their parades. God so loved the world. I mean, this is egregious, especially if you are a Christian who loves God, that he would dare use this twisting of scripture, because we know it's a promise that he will never forsake us, never flood the earth again. And here we have an example of this. And then here is a brief description. The other reason I got involved was I found out in August of 23 that the Abilene Pride Alliance was part of a lawsuit suing Abilene, Texas, Taylor County, and the state of Texas because the legislature in the 80th session dared pass a bill called SB 12 that prevented anyone from doing a sexual performance in front of children. And the Abilene Pride Alliance decided, that's just not fair. We should have our access to be able to do things in front of children, because that was the main limitation. It wasn't that we were saying you can't do it. It was you can't do it in front of kids. So you can't have a parade and you can't be provocative on the street or in a park or stuff like that. And they were like, hey, we'll be a part of a lawsuit with the 4 other groups from around the state of Texas. And they're so excited. And she's the secretary here. This lady here went down with the president who was in this car. They went down and participated in the legal things because this is her name is on the lawsuit as the president of the Pride Alliance. And I'm using her on purpose because I'm not going to soft pedal around this. They're being lied to. And I care enough about people to not lie to them, and I want to speak truth, even if it hurts, because I want people to find freedom. And it's really hard for me to do this because I've never been so vocal about this specific thing, even though I've tried my best to go behind the scenes and try and coax people to not do things with children, and they don't. And they're ramping it up. The story time thing is another attempt to circumvent the very precious, sacred innocence of a child, and I'm not okay with it. And there are many of you who are not okay with it, but most of you don't know what's going on, and that's why I'm taking a risk here and putting myself out there saying this is not okay. All right, so she went down to be a part of the lawsuit where they're suing Abilene, Texas, and Taylor County. And they're like, ACLU is like, thank you, or they're standing for the plaintiffs. Thank you, ACLU, for doing all you're doing. And then we are supportive of everyone who's trying to circumvent the law, sexually dancing, doing sexual performances in front of children. And then this summer, some other things came up. I guess it was in the spring. We have 7 and 1 who was a part of the promoting sponsors of the parade. They've also hosted a storybook creation for for families to attend. This is on a book about a man who dresses as a woman and the role that happened with the Stonewall riots, which is a whole twisting of history. These people weren't targeted because of their desire to dress like women. They were breaking the law. And there's things that we have to separate, and whatever they want to say it, but they're bringing kids into this picture. And again, men dressing like women used to be considered a mental illness, and it was only because the activists got on the boards and they were able to the queer activists got on the board that they were able to remove it. And so now we've been told we have to tolerate this, but we actually don't. We don't have to tolerate it. Here's a picture from that event at 7 and 1 Books where you see this is one of many pictures of children being there. And then last summer, at the Pride event, the convention center hosted it. It was supposed to be at the Taylor County the year before. They had to cancel it, so they didn't even really have an event the year before. They threw something together, and so it wasn't. It's been dwindling. The attendance is dwindling. This community does not support this. This is not something that is supported by the community. It's supported by outsiders, if that, and it's very few people. It is not like we're talking the West Texas Fair and Rodeo. I don't even know if you could say 100 people were there, but I didn't go to the last one. But it is not supported by our community enough to prompt them to continue doing this kind of flamboyant thing where mostly it's the men who are parading around as women. That's the big group, and they're coming from out of town. They're not even from our area. So here's a picture where these are two adults who had their 2 kids that were dressing in this drag, and I can show you can go back and look on their page. It's on there from last year at the end of, I think it was maybe in October 3rd last year, where they're showing these men dancing in ways that if I were to dance as a woman, I would not be allowed to dance in the city limits as that way. And these particular men some of them have been a part of events where they're handed single dollar bills. Again, as I told the interim police chief, that if I were to receive single dollar bills while dancing in very skimpy clothing, there would be some question as to whether or not it was considered something that should be on the outside the city limits. But because of our fear, because they're being sued, and even a councilman recently told me that they are having to pay the city. Our taxpayers are going to fight this lawsuit so that these people in the Abilene Pride Alliance can dance sexually in front of children. So when we call the bookstore of 7 and when we call the bookstore, the book therapy bookstore, and say, listen, we don't want you having events where kids are present. That's not appropriate. And if they don't understand, it's not the same. It's not the same. The kids, their innocence is not something we get to take advantage of. And at this point, you probably it'll have already happened. And there's not a lot you can do except you can contact the book therapy bookstore and let them know that you do not support them having children present when a man dressed as a woman is reading, because that is not about the children. It is about the man and what he finds satisfying in dressing in that way. And plus, it devalues women. I mean, in this day and age, how can we be so okay with letting these men devalue us and make a mockery of us by wearing over-the-top makeup, prosthetics, doing things that are not typical of a woman? And that's the part we have to wrestle with. And so the reason why I share this is because I want you to understand your voice can matter and make a difference. And you can be a citizen who is active and engaged and letting us be gatekeepers of what is allowed in our city. And it's not the city's job. It's not a legal responsibility. We can decide that we are okay with this or we're not. And we can make it so uncomfortable for these businesses to not want to do it again. And while there are some things that we don't have as much, like when you involve children, there should be no question that children come first. We protect children. And then if we want to love on them and try and help them walk in freedom and love them through the Lord, then let's do that. But we are not going to do this while children are in the presence of this, because we know that this scars them. It causes problems with them later in life. They're very confused. The research has been very misleading for many, many years on the effects of children, because it was also led by queer activists. And so what we've been told has been lies. What we've been told about Robert Money has been lies. He molested children while saying, oh yeah, they can pick their gender. No, there's no longer picking. It is that you are born as God created you. And those who struggle with that will walk through those doors, will walk down that road with them. But we're not going to let them continue to believe that it is okay for them to pretend to be something they are not, because who walks in freedom when you're pretending? It's just not a life of freedom, and we know better. So we want to offer hope to people. And I hope that makes sense. I hope you've seen the compassion I have. But when it comes to children, we're not going to mess around. And many of these people on this Abilene Pride Alliance board have been there supporting the library, maintaining their sexual provocative books that are inappropriate for children. They would not be like used to if they were in the old time. They would have a cover over it at the front of the store where only adults can buy them. It is that inappropriate, but because we've gone so far off in the weeds trying to protect these people's accept them and given them their identity and let them know that they matter, and we have to agree with them. Because we've done that, we can no longer let them require us to be tolerant of their behavior. It is okay that we draw a line in the sand that you don't mess with our kids. And if you want to do it as adults, it's not okay in our books, but we have no leg to stand on. So don't mess with our kids. Keep them out. Focus on yourselves and leave the children alone. And it's not, there's more I can go into, but that's a gist of it. And I just want you to know what's going on. And if you decide, Tammy, you're off your rocker, I'm fine with them sexualizing children, then right now, that's your free will to do that. But I'm not going to stop until we have a hedge around our kids so that they are no longer exposed to this stuff and that their innocence is violated before they're at an age of maturity where they can decide these things. And there's so much more I can go into that, but I just want you to know I've been well read in this area. I have fought hard. I've been consistent. These people don't want to engage. They don't want to talk about it. They just want to say it loud. They want to talk about their harm, their suffering, while violating children. And again, adults do hard things, so children don't have to. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that you got a little insight as to why this is okay for us to stand and draw a line in the sand on. And it's worth discussing. And if you have any questions or comments, just let me know. I'll be happy to discuss more with you. We'll be talking about this in the days ahead, because if they're continuing to attack, to target children, we're going to stand up. And I am a vocal person about it, but I'm not alone. And there are many people in the city who feel the way I do and who are okay with taking the stand. They're just not going to show themselves in the same way that I have a platform to do that. So again, I'm open for discussion about how we can stop the sexualizing of our children, but I'm not going to discuss that the adults get to have free access to them no matter what, because they have an identity crisis. So please make sure you share this with your friends and family. It's so important that we communicate and have hard conversations about this in respectful ways. And even though it may sound harsh what I'm saying, it has been respectful, and I've tried to honor these people even in the places that they have put themselves. And I could have gone into more details, but I chose to stay in the lane, which is we don't mess with children. As long as you don't mess with children, you don't have to mess with me for now. So make sure that you share this with your friends and family. And I hope you've been a little empowered. I can't ever say that right. I hope that you've been a little educated, a little informed, and a little empowered to make an impact in Abilene and the Big Country. Until next time.